Hi, I'm Auntie Dawn. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making dragon soup. When I was younger, I loved to go to medieval times. I loved the costumes, the horses, but most of all, the food. It wasn't even slightly historically accurate, but it was very tasty. The soup they served, called dragon soup, was a very satisfying bowl, full of beef and a tomato broth with lima beans and carrots. Here's my version, as it's evolved over the years. I'll start by chopping up the garlic. You see I've got almost a whole head here. This soup really appreciates a lot of garlic. You know, this is enough garlic that I think I'm going to run it through the crusher rather than chop it all by hand. This is one of these really nice sturdy garlic presses. It opens up all the way. There are no hidden places for garlic to hide itself. I can get multiple pressings in before I have to get in there and clean it out. But crushing should actually deliver a more powerful garlic punch. So this will be fun. And there's my crushed garlic. Next, I'll chop up my red onion. This can be a pretty rough chop because there won't be any large pieces that end up in the finished soup. So, about like this. There's my chopped onion. Next, I'm going to scrub my carrots. Just a thin stream of water and a nice rough scrubby sponge. These carrots are already pretty clean, but they just get a little bit funky. I really like to use all purple carrots. It helps underscore the reddish color in the soup. But in this week's bag of carrots, there was only one purple, no red. So one purple and two orange it is. When you cook up purple carrots, they don't retain a very brilliant color, but they can get a little reddish rather than grayish. So that's what I'm going for. So I'm going to dry them thoroughly. I'm going to brown them before they go in the soup. So a dry skin is a good place to start. I know a lot of folks say, well, it's all going to go in the pot anyway. Why bother browning up stuff separately? But you do get a lot more of that flavor. A nice browning flavor. Okay, so I'm just going to cut off this broken end here, and I'm going to want fairly small pieces. So I'm going to start by cutting this rather substantial carrot half both ways, and then into fairly small bites like this. And I'm just making sure that I keep extending these half and half cuts as I go up the carrot so I don't start producing half rounds or even whole rounds, which would not go well in the soup. And I find it's just a little safer to keep clearing the cutting board. If I kind of back myself into a corner with the rest of the cutting board heaped with cut ingredients, I'm much more likely to manage to nick myself. And now I've reached this part where it had kind of split, and I'm just going to use the tip of the knife to scrape down both of the sides, because sometimes little bits of dirt can hide in there. When I eat a bite of dragon soup, I really want to be sure that it's a bit of pepper I'm biting into, not a bit of dirt. All right, so here I'm starting that quarter cut again. This may seem like kind of a vastness of carrot, but the carrot lends a really nice base sweetness to the recipe. And besides, when I make a pot of soup, I like to make a big pot of soup because it freezes well, and it's nice to have that in the freezer for when cooking is impractical of a night. Just thaw out a jar of soup. And there's my chopped carrot. All right, next I'm going to chop up my zucchini. Give it a good wash and dry. Now I'll just cut off the blossom end and cut it into little bite-sized quarters. Just like that. And there's my chopped zucchini. I'm adding in this one random pizza pepper that the plant that I didn't take out at the end of the fall gave, and you can see there's almost no seeds in it. This is just as I cut up. I haven't de-seeded it all. I guess the pollinators are taking a break this winter. So this is not any important fraction of the soup, but since I have it, I will add this pepper chopped up into tiny bits. There's my chopped pepper. I'll be cutting it into quite smaller pieces than I do when I'm making a plain old sauteed or stir-fried broccoli. So, but I'm going to start the same way, cutting the stem chunk into a manageable portion, but then I'm going to cut it into matchsticks. Just like that. The florets, I'm going to cut into small chunks like this. Since I don't want them to be too long, if the stem has come up in any sort of long way, I'll cut it into pieces like that. Basically, I don't want anything in the soup that is going to take up the majority of the spoonful. The florets, the flower structure, breaks down a lot more in the soup than the stem does, so I need to make sure I render these stems into smaller pieces. All right, I've got another stem section here. I will again matchstick it. There's my broccoli. Okay, my last step is to spread my ground beef out. This stuff was frozen, so as you can see, it is formed pretty much a paste. It is a finely commercially ground grass-fed beef. Remember, I picked up this batch of beef right at the start of the pandemic, just when folks were starting to wear masks, and it has been just fine down in the deep freeze ever since. I really like making my own ground beef when I'm making something like hamburgers, but for something like dragon soup or chili, this pre-ground stuff is perfect. And there's my beef. Now that I've chopped up all my ingredients, I've opened a window and I'm going to turn on my ventilation before turning on the heat. Okay, now that my pans have gotten hot, I'm going to put about a half teaspoon of oil in each one. I'm using olive oil. I really like the kind of clear richness it lends this dish. All right, now I'm going to divide the beef between them. Now I'm going to chop at it and stir it around until they are both nice and brown. Because this beef was frozen, it is letting off a lot of water. So this is going to take a good long fry to get it brown. Okay, the beef is starting to sizzle as the water cooks off. Just going to keep stirring it and hitting it with this spatula to break it up. All right, this is browning nicely, so I'm going to add the garlic to the pot. So now I've switched from the spatula that I was using on the raw meat to the spoon that I'm going to use throughout the rest of the cooking process. Anything that's bigger than a bite-sized piece, I want to get in there and break it up. So I'm going to turn off the heat under here, pour this off. And now I'm going to turn the heat back on and throw in my onions. Throw a little salt on these and cover them up to let them soften while I deal with the soup. So I'm going to add a bit of stock or water, get that stirred up. If you've got beef stock, it's a great thing to use here, but if you don't, it's still fine. I'm going to add quite a bit of beef better than bouillon, which is going to cover up any chicken flavor, but it's nice to have that base. So at this point, I'm also going to add the lentils. And I'm going to cover this up because I want those lentils to get nice and soft. Lentils are such a nice legume. They cook up quickly, they're tasty, very cheap. Everything to love. I turn down the heat a little bit because the onions are starting to brown. There we go. That's getting nice and brown. Actually, a little too brown. Add a little water here. Okay, you can see steam starting to escape around the edges here. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit. So I want to keep as much of that moisture in there as I can. Yeah, add a bit more water in there. I don't want to add a hugeness of water. The bulk of the liquid in this is going to be the tomato juice, which I'm not going to put in till toward the end. Now these onions are ready to go in. I'm going to deglaze the pan with a little more water. Now it's going to heat up again so the carrots can go in. All right, some more olive oil and the carrots. I'm going to give these a sprinkle of salt. Let them start to brown on medium. All right, the carrots are starting to sizzle, so I'll give them a stir. Check in on the beef and lentils. Oh, those are coming along. All right, at this point, I'm going to add my base layer of heat, which is doom pepper. This is from an ají lucento pepper, which is a really nice perennial pepper variety. You see, I'm only putting a tiny bit in because it is potent. This was grown out where it gets sunnier than here than in the inner bay, and it packs a punch. So I found the trick to really getting something interesting flavored, not just the top of the flavor being heat, but that it goes all the way through, is to add it in layers. For example, I'm going to add some cayenne to these carrots. And cooking the spices as you go adds more levels of richness of flavor. But once I add the cayenne to those carrots, I really want to keep an eye on them because spices like cayenne love to burn. Okay, so now that the carrots are getting done, I need to make a judgment call. I need to see if these lentils are far enough along that I want to add the carrots directly or hold them off to the side along with the green vegetables. And these lentils are still pretty toothsome, so I'm going to add a bit more water and cover it up again. Because the last thing I want is overcooked carrots. Mushy carrots are no good in soup. Still want them to have a bit of bite when it comes time to eat them. All right, I see browning. Give these lentils another taste. Still pretty firm. Right. All right, these carrots are getting done enough, then I'm going to remove them. I'm going to deglaze the pan to get all of that cayenne and carrot sugar off. Throw that right into the pot. In my experience, the more deglazing you do, more of the flavor that you carry over into the pot, the more rich and interesting the flavor ends up being. Okay, now I'm going to heat this one up again under medium. Add some more olive oil and my zucchini. Get that all up in the oil. Spread out. Okay, now I can start adding in the tomato juice. This is the veggie blend low sodium stuff. Having it start off low sodium means I can get more of that better than bouillon in there without making it too salty. You can see I'm pouring something acid into cast iron here. This is not a pan that I attempt to keep well seasoned. That the lid for the moment to let it. All right, and that'll do for the broccoli. Get that off. All right, let's see how the soup is coming along. Nice. A little bit of toothsomeness. Could be saltier and beefier, as well as spicier. So I think I'm going to add a bit more cayenne while it's still cooking. The levels you're going to want to add vary so much. I mean, for me, just over the course of a month, my spice tolerance waxes and wanes. And you can always make it spicier, but making it less spicy is tricky. So I like to get some of it at the base, let it cook, and then decide when it's mostly done how I want to adjust the spice, especially with pre-prepared chilies like chili sauce or chili crisp or chili oil. All right, it's been simmering another few minutes. Let's see what's happened. Nice, a good spicy, beefy flavor under at the base of it. The carrots are still a little on the crunchy side, so I'm going to let it simmer on low for a bit longer. All right, let's check in. That's looking good. Yeah, I like that. All right, a bit more tomato juice, and I think a bit more spice in the form of some kimchi juice. Love this stuff. Remember, this end process where you make it taste good to you is super key to making a soup that's really going to be pleasing to you. It's really great when you're not going to eat it right away, because when you eat it right away, it can not taste so great because you've just been totally full of the flavors of it as you've been cooking it. But once you put it away, it mellows out and gets to know itself. Then it is really delicious. There we go. All right. So now I'm going to add the rest of my veggies. And that's suddenly all dried up. I'm going to add some more tomato juice. Broccoli will absorb a lot of water. Oh, and pepper. Dragon soup wants a lot of pepper. Should have been adding that in for all along. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. And here's my dragon soup. It goes best with jousting, but it's also really nice with a crusty French bread. I hope you enjoyed this dragon soup as much as I do. See you next time.